Going to go ahead and call this April 17th, 2017 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Thanks everyone for coming this evening. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Brian to lead us tonight. I think that was Brian. I wasn't sure. Good answer. We'll move on to our one and only presentation this evening, and that's with Dylan regarding our annual review and consideration of approval for the Whitefish Convention and Visitor Bureau marketing plan and the public portion of their lodging tax budget for FY18. Dylan.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Mulfeld, City Council, and City staff. I'm here tonight to present some information on the activities of the Whitefish Convention and Visitors Bureau, also known as Explore Whitefish, and to request that the City Council approve the WCVB FY18 marketing plan and the public portion of the budget. For your reference, this information can be found on pages 48 to 89 of your packet. State law requires this approval in order for the WCVB to receive annual funds from the Lodging Facility Use Tax, which is also known as the bed tax. A sample creative slideshow that you'll see behind you will be playing throughout the presentation on the monitor. And before I begin, I would like to introduce the 9 members of the WCVB Board of Directors. I'm very fortunate to have such an engaged and passionate group to serve at the pleasure of. Zach Anderson, Chair, Whitefish Lake Golf Club. Erica Terrell, Vice Chair, Glacier Restaurant Group, representing restaurants and bar. Rhonda Fitzgerald, Secretary Treasurer for the Garden Wall Inn, representing small lodging. Nick Columbus, Whitefish Mountain Resort. Jennifer Fisher, Kandahar Lodge and Big Mountain Commercial Association, representing small lodging and transportation. Mariah Jose, Nelson's Hardware, Retail Representative. Edna White, Averill Hospitality, Large Lodging Property Representation. Luke Walrath, Alpine Theater Project, At Large Arts and Culture, and Jake Cook, Videotech Montana LLC, At Large Technology. The mission of the WCVB is to promote Whitefish as a premier authentic travel destination to non-resident visitors. We align perfectly with the Montana brand and use the Montana brand pillars in unison to promote exactly what Whitefish is. A vibrant, charming, small town that provides breathtaking experiences by day, relaxing hospitality at night, and serves as a gateway to spectacular, unspoiled nature. We are fortunate to work with 2 excellent agencies, both based in Whitefish. Old Town Creative, which is John and Jen Franzen, are our contracted creative agency, and LJ Communications, comprised of Lisa Jones and Brian Schott, are our contracted public relations agency. I'm now going to highlight a few of the areas of activity of the WCVB, which includes advertising, our website, which is explorewhitefish.com, public relations, and visitor information and fulfillment services. So I'm going to start with advertising briefly. We enter into paid advertising, online, print, and out of home in core geographic target markets outside the state of Montana, which are identified as having large potential for growth. These include Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Chicago, and our regional drive-to market, including Spokane, Washington. Minneapolis and Alberta are established geographic markets with historically strong visitation to Whitefish. Although both markets are very important from a visitation perspective, we are currently choosing to invest in those core geographic markets, which I just identified. Fluctuations in international currency rates severely affect visitation and spending from Alberta, and as a result, we are very cautious to not become overly reliant on that one market. We leverage our advertising dollars with cooperative marketing opportunities provided by the Montana Office of Tourism and Business Development, and actively participate in cooperative opportunities with regional partners, which include Amtrak, Glacier Country Regional Tourism, and Whitefish Mountain Resort. We spend approximately 60% of our advertising budget promoting winter, 20% on fall, which we call Summer Plus, and 20% on spring, which we call Secret Season. We continue to put our efforts into driving visitation to Whitefish during the shoulder seasons to ensure that we continue to have a year-round vibrant town and community, not necessarily increasing capacity during the busy summer months of July and August. The CVB continues to heavily support the work of Glacier Aero by providing inbound marketing support for new and expanded direct winter air service to Glacier National Park from San Francisco and Chicago. We supported the first year of direct winter service to San Francisco on United by engaging in a cooperative out-of-home campaign with Whitefish Mountain Resort and the Kalispell Convention Visitors Bureau, including a matching grant from the Montana Office of Tourism and Business Development. And this $60,000 ad buy that we were able to secure featured awe-inspiring imagery of skiing at Whitefish Mountain Resort, the beautiful downtown winter photo of the town of Whitefish, as well as Glacier National Park, with a strong call to action to take the winter direct flight to Glacier Park International Airport. And these ads, which started running at the beginning of January, went till the end of February, and they were displayed on bus wraps on select community routes, as well as in the some strategic BART train station locations as well. And for the third year in a row, we did engage in a cooperative out-of-home campaign in Chicago with Whitefish Mountain Resort for that expanded Chicago winter flight this winter. Once again, awe-inspiring images, particularly of skiing at Whitefish Mountain Resort, were used in that campaign with that strong call to action to take the winter flight from Chicago O'Hare to Glacier Park International Airport. And those ads ran mid-December through early February, and those were strategic locations within the Metro train system in Chicago. And I should have final numbers, performance numbers, on both the Chicago and San Francisco flights for you by the next time I present my quarterly tourism dashboard, which is probably later this spring.
Yep.
All the primary call to action in our paid advertising is to visit our website, which is explorewhitefish.com. So far this fiscal year, our website sessions are up approximately 12% over the same time period from last year. And our total FY15 sessions were, FY16 sessions were 261,000. We're currently at about 231,000 right now. As I previously mentioned, we do have an outstanding public relations team. In FY16, publicity results reached audiences of over 200 million people. So far this fiscal year, our PR team has hosted 15 A-list journalists in Whitefish, and they also visited with around 75 journalists at fall media events, which took place in San Francisco and Seattle, and those were cooperatively hosted with Glacier Country Regional Tourism. I'm just going to quickly mention some recent publicity that we have received this winter as a direct result of the efforts of our PR team. Montana Ski Town offers deep snow, authentic mountain vibe, Dallas Morning News. Skiing Whitefish, big mountain, hip town, no pressure, Boston Globe. A winter guide to Whitefish, Montana, Fallen Traveler. A town we love, Whitefish, in Big Life magazine. Eating your way through Glacier Country, Parade magazine. The best family ski resorts in the US and Canada, Condé Nast Travel. And how to plan the perfect fall trip to Glacier National Park, US News and World Report. Lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the incredible amount of work that was put forth by the WCVB PR team this year, in particular for crafting and effectively implementing a crisis communication strategy that protected the Whitefish brand and really ensured that Whitefish is not associated with extreme ideology for the present nor well into the future. And I believe this isn't just an issue that has serious implications for the tourism industry. I think it has implications for the economy of Whitefish in general. And I think our community as a whole really does owe quite a bit of gratitude to Lisa Jones and Brian Schott for all of their efforts in an extremely difficult issue. I also want to talk a little bit about visitor information fulfillment services. In addition to advertising and PR, we do publish the official Whitefish travel guide and Whitefish town map. And this year we printed 25,000 of the Whitefish travel guides, and we're looking like we're going to distribute and print up to 45,000 Whitefish town maps through the summer. Both pieces are distributed through various channels. These include our 1-800 number, which is published in the travel guide as well as on the website. Website requests, you can go online and request a travel guide. 4 kiosks, which are located around downtown Whitefish, as well as the Walk-In Visitor Center, which is at 3rd and Spokane, which is a joint cooperative effort between the Whitefish Chamber and the CVB. as well as other strategic locations around town, our region, and at our information rack at Glacier Park International Airport. So to summarize, we know that what we're doing is working. Our targeted online ads are consistently outperforming the industry standard. Earned media exposure continues to grow, and most importantly, this translates into real business for Whitefish throughout all seasons, and particularly our shoulder seasons. Even though we are subject to positive and negative travel and tourism trends, both domestically and internationally, we're tirelessly working to promote and drive traffic to Whitefish and visitation specifically in those shoulder seasons, regardless of what those trends might be. When projecting our annual budget, we take into consideration historic trends, mostly from the Whitefish Resort Tax, Whitefish Lodging Tax collections, our Tourism Promotion Assessment, or TPA 1% voluntary collections, as well as we do receive a preliminary revenue projection as well from the Montana Department of Commerce. And based upon these numbers, for this year, we're projecting a 10% increase to our annual public budget. And that's simply due to the fact that we have over 160 new lodging rooms in the city limits of Whitefish, which are subject to resort tax and lodging facility use tax collections. So I'm looking specifically at the lodging facility use tax collections and the fact that we did not have those rooms when we were budgeting for last fiscal year. So we're not necessarily saying that there's going to be a big increase in growth. We're just saying that since we have those 160 extra rooms, that our collections are actually going to increase, which we already saw kind of toward the end of this fiscal year. With that said, we're going to continue to be creative and innovative with our tourism marketing and our public relations efforts in order to continue to drive visitation from the high-yield, low-impact geo-travelers, which we have stated as our niche target market for Whitefish. And once again, I'm here tonight to request the City Council to approve our FY18 marketing plan and the public tax budget, which for this year we are projecting at $99,000. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Dylan. Any questions for Dylan? I had one, and maybe your board has discussed this when you indicated a 10% projection in your lodging revenue because of the 160 new rooms that have come online. Do you see those rooms taking away rooms from other lodging establishments so that it's basically going to be a net zero revenue increase, or how do you look at that?
So that's a really
just because we're saturated and we're all aware of that.
So that's a really great question. Back in May, I began to receive what's called a STAR report, which is a lodging occupancy report that Smith Travel Research puts out that we paid for. And until those new two properties came online, the Hampton and the Firebrand, we didn't have enough properties in town that reported that the company would even provide us with that data, even though we wanted to pay for it previously. So I don't have a full year's worth to really compare to say for sure whether those extra rooms in those new properties are taking away business. The one thing that I can tell you is that those rooms are pretty full in the summertime. For July and August, we're seeing 80% occupancy, and we're seeing, as Jen Franzen showed in the work session graphs, that you're talking a pretty significant decrease of percentage, and average daily rate goes down significantly in the shoulder seasons. Right. So you're seeing both. You're seeing a decrease in rate in those shoulder seasons that I have, at least from May up until I have them through February. I don't have the March ones yet. So you're seeing decrease in ADR and decrease in lodging occupancy. Now, do I know if that's directly related to the increase in inventory or not? I don't have a year's worth of data yet, so ask me in a few months.
It'll be interesting next year to look at those
numbers.
numbers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even a year from now, I'll even have more data, so be happy to continue that conversation.
Great. Thanks, Dylan. Further questions or comments? Jen?
I am just going to disclose that I own and am an employee of Old Town Creative and Interactive, which is the creative agency of record for the Whitefish CVB. We do not see any funds coming in from the public bed tax funds that we are voting on tonight, so I will go ahead and vote unless there are any objections.
Not seeing any, we will need a motion from the council to adopt the WCVB marketing plan and the public portion of their budget. Katie?
I would move to adopt the fiscal year 18 CVB marketing plan and the public lodging tax budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? Great job as usual to your entire board as well as yourself, Dylan. It was a great work session and look forward to working with you guys on what we discussed.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and
You
thank you
bet.
for your time.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that carries unanimously. Michelle, thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 4, which is communications from the public. This is time set aside for the public to comment on items that are on the agenda but not advertised as a public hearing, or anything else you would wish to bring to the attention of the council. And just for the record, your name and address when you approach the podium. Any public comment tonight? We'll stay with the audience. Any volunteer board reports? How about the council? Richard's not here, so Frank, good.
Just add one. The PUD committee did meet again last week, and we're meeting in the next couple of weeks. I think we've got a document that we want to work through a public outreach and a work session with the planning board, and I think that's being planned for the next planning, or not this month's planning board, but the following month's planning board. So there'll be we're trying to create a work session for the planning board and a public, essentially outreach at the same time. And so we haven't quite figured out what that wants to look like. We're gonna consult with the planning board this week, and then try to figure that out, but that's the plan.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Further board reports from the council? Not seeing any, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Any changes or additions to the April 3rd minutes, or can I have a motion, please?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
That was seconded by Katie Williams. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And that passes unanimously as well, Michelle. We'll move on to item 7, which are our public hearings for this evening. We do have 6 public hearings. We'll start with item 7A, which is consideration of a request from Mark Panacidi, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, for a conditional use permit to develop a 3-story mixed-use building with 7 residential units located at 139 East 2nd Street, and this is on page 110 of your packet. Wendy.
Good evening. So this is a request for a conditional use permit to develop a mixed-use project with 7 residential units in the WB3. Again, this is a 3-story mixed-use building at 139 East 2nd Street. The building will have ground floor commercial, 1 ground floor residential unit, and 6 residential units on the 2nd and 3rd floor. Access to the site will be off of O'Brien Avenue, and there's a little parking area there where there's 8 parking spaces proposed. Outdoor spaces for the building include a concrete terrace on the ground floor and private balconies on the 2nd and 3rd floors. So a conditional use permit is required because it is a structure with more than 4 dwelling units. The property is a little less than 1/4 of an acre, located at the corner of 2nd and O'Brien. It is undeveloped in zone WB3. It has a growth policy designation of core commercial and is served by all public services and facilities. We did notify adjacent landowners, place a legal in the paper. Right before the planning board, we did receive an email from the folks that are the board for the senior center to the west of this property. They were concerned with the size of the building, the lack of parking, and concerns of spillover parking onto their area. Again, the growth policy designates this area as core commercial, which is consistent with the WB3. The property, all the standards in the WB3 are being met, including setbacks, the residential density, parking, height, and height again will be reviewed at the time of building permit, but as it is now, it looks like it's meeting all the standards. The site is suitable. There's adequate area to meet all the standards and requirements. There's no environmental constraints. The quality and functionality of the site plan is appropriate. The traffic will enter by a driveway located on O'Brien Avenue, and no other access points are being proposed. The project is well suited to take advantage of surrounding recreational amenities, including the trail along the river, K-Beller Park, and Riverside Park. The property is served by all water and sewer and will be required to submit a stormwater plan. As part of the project, they are proposing to kind of improve the frontage along O'Brien Avenue, put in a sidewalk, curb, gutter, street trees, and a boulevard, and possibly streetlights if it's required. We did send notice to MDT, and we didn't receive any comments from them. So they'll need to just work with Public Works to improve that frontage. No traffic study was required because it was less than 200 trips, but it's anticipated that East Street and O'Brien Avenue will be able to accommodate all the traffic. The proposed uses are compatible with the downtown and help to implement the downtown master plan. The building will be required to obtain architectural review prior to submitting a building permit, and part of that review will be ensuring neighborhood and community compatibility. At 3 stories, this building will be one of the more massive buildings on the south side of East 2nd Street. However, it is at the bottom of a steep hill, and across the street there are several multi-story buildings. The 3rd story, as per the requirements of the zoning, is set back 20 feet from the property lines that help to reduce its bulk and mass. And the front of the building is going to line up with the front of the senior center, so it's set back a bit from East 2nd Street. And they're also set back a bit on the west and south side property lines. The neighborhood is mostly a mixed use neighborhood. There's commercial uses along East 2nd Street with residential, mostly multifamily, to the south. The proposed mixed-use, high-density project will complement the existing neighborhood. So the planning board held a public hearing on March 16th. The applicant's representative spoke at the hearing, and the minutes were attached to the packet. Following the hearing, the planning board did recommend approval subject to 14 conditions of approval. They added a couple of conditions. A new condition, number 13, that sufficient area would be set aside for recycling and that no building wash lighting would be used. And then just to hit some of the highlights of the conditions of approval. Again, we're asking them to coordinate with the Public Works Department regarding the construction and encroachment permit. They need to coordinate with Public Works and North Valley Refuse for garbage. All exterior mechanical equipment needs to be screened visually and acoustically, which is a standard requirement in our architectural review. And we do need a landscaping plan. So that's about it. Can I answer any questions for you?
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy? Frank?
I know we have minimal parking requirements. Wendy, do we have a sense of what the commercial uses are going to be on the first floor of that building?
They haven't said.
And was there any way to do, as a result, is there any way for us to do any kind of an analysis as to what kind of traffic and parking that's going to entail or require to service for that? for
The
that
B3
commercial
doesn't
use?
require any parking.
I understand that, but
for
I'm,
commercial
did
uses.
we think through that? Because as we know now with the commercial uses along Second Street, that where all the parking is, I mean, when those restaurants are full, it's a disaster.
It's busy.
And people can get hurt really quickly. And that's been raised with me a couple of times with folks. Have we thought through that, given where we are? Is there any way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything from a professional office to a restaurant. I
Right.
mean, the range of uses is so
Yeah.
varied. And there's on-street parking on Second, correct, Craig? I believe there's on-street.
Oh, yeah, I
parking
know
on
there
Second.
is,
Yeah,
but
there
that's,
is.
yeah. What you end up with, as we've all seen, is that people park along Second Street, and as they do, they run between the cars and right out into the road, and it's like, holy cow. So, anyway, just a thought. Thanks.
Question for you, Adam. Since this property is within our SID district for the parking structure, they would be likewise assessed.
Yeah, I
Under that
imagine they would
SID
be.
for
Yeah, we'll
parking.
have to run that calculation.
Okay, great. Further questions for Wendy? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 7A, and we'll hold that public hearing now. Anyone wishing to provide comment, please approach the podium and just name and address for the record, please.
My name is Ken Huff. I'm the architect on the project. I live in Summers. I don't know if I need to read my address into the record or not.
Please.
1032 Klondike Loop, Summers, Montana.
Thanks.
Real quickly, I can address your question about what's planned for retail. The developer absolutely, under no circumstances, wants a restaurant in there. We're not planning for it. There will be no accommodations electrically, mechanically, or anything in any way. The smell, grease traps, that kind of thing, that would just permeate up through the building. It's just not something he wants to do. So probably some kind of small, not high, like small retail, bookstore, ski shop, clothing store, something like that. Maybe a coffee shop, but something pretty small, not something where you're going to have 100 people trying to hit at 5 o'clock in the evening. So, if you are so inclined, those were very old elevations on there. We were just kind of getting the massing, but I have the most current renderings on my surface if you guys would like to see them. If you're concerned about appearance, I know that's an architectural review thing.
Sure, if you could flash them real quickly, that'd be great.
So that's, should I walk it around?
Sure, if you don't mind. I'd ask you to project it, but it would probably take a half hour to figure out with our technology here.
Hopefully it'll be better soon.
Thanks, Ken.
And other than that, if you just have any questions,
Any questions for Ken? Not at this time. Not saying there might not be later. Thanks. Public testimony this evening. Any public comments? Rhonda?
Good evening, Rhonda Fitzgerald, 412 Lupfer Ave. I'm, of course, very happy to see investment in our downtown core. That lot has been vacant for a really long time. It used to be a retail shop, surf cycle sale. My son used to BMX behind it all the time. And so it's great to see an investment in the downtown. I think it's kind of a shame that we haven't done the B3, the commercial zone overlay and the update of the architectural review standards, because this application kind of brought several things to mind. I think that through our commercial core, we were trying to get ground floor retail, not residential. So that was a concern. I think we're trying to not have setbacks and have built to sidewalk lines in our commercial core. I realize these are not required at this time, but this seems like it's going in the wrong direction for the future. And I'm very concerned about, although I support mixed use, I'm very concerned about the terms dwelling unit and residential, because what we're actually seeing a lot of, including across the street from this project, is short-term rental. And to call it residential, I think, is disingenuous if it's intended to be overnight rental. And that brings a whole bunch of different questions to mind, and I just wanted to mention that because we're seeing a lot of it. There is not adequate demand to meet that supply. You asked Dylan, the small lodging properties tell me anecdotally that they're losing market share. The pie is not getting bigger, and the slices are getting narrower. So any additional vacation rental, they often don't participate with the bed tax or the resort tax unless it's policed closely. And it's legal in that zone, but I mean, call it what it is if that's what it is. I hope it's residential because we really want to see more downtown residential, and there's a demand for it. The housing study has shown us that. So that's just a comment for the future and kind of a heads up. And then my personal comment is that I really hope, I couldn't see the drawings, but this one looks like more barnwood, rusty metal, patchwork look, and that's starting to be our sort of default look in town, and I hope that we don't get a lot more of that, or we will definitely lose our own look and feel and have something imposed on us that is not really of Whitefish. So hopefully it's not barnwood. That's a taste comment.
I don't
Thank
think
you.
there is. Ken can show you the elevations. Thanks, Rhonda. Further public comment tonight? Not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for discussion or a motion.
I would move to approve WCUP 1702, the findings of fact and staff report, the 14 conditions of approval as recommended by the Whitefish Planning Board on March 16, 2017.
Is there a second to the motion?
A second.
Seconded by Councilor Williams. Further discussion? Jen?
So I guess my primary concern here is that we have residential on the ground floor in WB3, even in the conditional uses states that residential areas, the multifamily dwellings and/or dwelling group clusters are limited to floors other than the ground floor. Dave or Wendy, can you potentially address my concerns? Is that specifically what we're conditioning here?
I think a multifamily is an allowed conditional use in that zoning district.
It says
Part of the
mul-
reason of those are like a live-work unit, I think. So you could actually live behind your office if you had an office down there. I think Wendy has the code book. So
Is this specifically in the Old Town District?
This is the Old Town Railway, and that provision is for the Old Town Central.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
So
you.
just downtown does not allow residential on the ground floor, just on Central Avenue.
Okay, yeah, so what I was reading was multifamily dwellings in excess of 4 dwelling units, with the exception that in the Old Town Central District, such use is limited to floors other than the ground floor. Okay, and then the other piece would be the same dwelling groups or clusters, with the exception that in the Old Town Central District, such use is limited to floors other than ground floor. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Further discussion or comments? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that carries unanimously. Michelle, thanks for coming in tonight, Ken. We'll move on to item 7B, consideration of a request from Andre LaRose and D. Henry Elson, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. If not, I apologize, for a preliminary plat for 5 lots on 4.16 acres located at 325 Haugen Heights Road, and this is on page 148 of your packet. Wendy.
Okay. So this is a preliminary plat request, a major subdivision for 5 lots on 4.16 acres at 325 Haugen Heights Road. Lots range in size from half an acre to 1.36 acres in size. Each lot fronts on Haugen Heights Road, which is a private road and utility easement that's been upgraded as part of the Tamarack Ridge subdivision, kind of to the south and west of this property. And then also, in lieu of dedicating parkland, the applicant is proposing to provide cash that's equivalent to 0.29 acres. No subdivision variances are being requested. The property is undeveloped and zone WER. We noticed adjacent landowners, we posted a sign on the property, placed a legal in the paper, and we didn't receive any comments. We review preliminary plats according to the criteria in the zoning and subdivision regulations. Under health and safety, the fire department was satisfied with the road layout as it's already been designed to meet emergency services, and hydrants were installed along the road during the reconstruction for Tamarack Ridge. As this property is at the base of Lion Mountain, kind of the standard wildland urban interface conditions will apply. Again, access is directly, each lot has access directly off of Haugen Heights Road. The project will generate about 50 daily trips, so a traffic impact study was not required, but we're expecting that the roads will be able to accommodate the traffic after full build out. The area is not mapped for Montana Fish, Wildlife. Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks didn't map this area as important winter range or crucial habitat. The water and sewer were extended with the Tamarack Ridge subdivision, so each owner has frontage along the street for water and sewer, and just will be extended as part of the development of the house. Again, the street was upgraded with Tamarack Ridge. It's a private road and utility easement, and it was upgraded to a 24-foot wide paved rural section with a 5-foot wide asphalt path that's constructed on the south side of the road. A decorative light was also installed at the intersection of Haugen Heights Road and Merganser Court. And in lieu of installing a sidewalk along the frontage of this particular subdivision, the Public Works Department is requesting a fee in lieu of the sidewalk. They are required to dedicate, according to Montana state law, 0.29 acres, and they are proposing to do cash in lieu of land dedication. This matter did go to the Park Board at their March meeting, and they did recommend cash in lieu of parkland. And just as a side note, the 2 adjacent neighborhoods, Tamarack Ridge to kind of the west and south, and then Maple Ridge to the east, they also paid cash in lieu of parkland dedication. The growth policy designation of this area is suburban residential, and the WER complies with that. The subdivision is meeting all of the requirements of the WER zone. So the planning board held a public hearing on March 16th, and they unanimously voted approval of the subdivision, and they just made one amendment to condition number 12, which is our standard post office condition. Typically, they do those kind of boxes with all the different types of, all the different mailboxes, but we've added the if required by the postmaster, because he indicated that possibly they wouldn't want that kind of in that neighborhood. But just to hit some of the highlights of the other conditions of approval, again, they'll pay cash in lieu of parkland at the time of final plat, cash in lieu of sidewalks at the time of final plat. They'll submit a map of fire protection features to the fire chief for review and approval prior to final plat that would show roads, hydrants, water supply, and any other pertinent information that the fire department would have on hand. And I think that's about it. Can I answer any questions for you?
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 7B, and we'll hold that public hearing now. Bruce or Doug, are you here representing the applicant? Or, thanks.
I'll just say hi. My name's Andre LaRose. You did a very good job.
Oh, good.
So, and my husband Henry and I are, we submitted this for your approval. It seems to be something that fits in with that wooded sort of rural area. And I just want to thank Wendy and the planning department. I think this process has been very smooth, professional, and so appreciate all the work. I'm here if you have questions, and so are Bruce and Doug. And my address is 901 Stewart Street in Helena.
Great.
For a little while longer.
Thanks very much. Further public testimony on this item? Not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing and turn it back to council for a motion or discussion. Jen?
Let's see here. I would move to approve WPP 17-01, and the findings of fact in the staff report and the 14 conditions of approval as recommended by the Whitefish Planning Board on March 16.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Barberis. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that's again unanimous. Michelle, thanks very much. Good luck with the project. We'll move on to what will be Ordinance 17-17, an ordinance rezoning approximately 1.5 acres of land located at 1 Tides Way in Section 35, Township 31 North, Range 22 West in Flathead County, Montana, from County R3, which is their one-family residential district, to R Whitefish WLR, equivalent zoning, our one-family limited residential district, and adopting findings with respect to such rezone on a first reading. Wendy.
Okay, so the two rezones that you have before you tonight are kind of the last of those 44 parcels that were annexed in January. So again, this is two parcels that were recently zoned R3, and we are proposing to rezone them to WLR. The parcels are located at 1 Tides Way and are now located within the city limits because they were annexed in January. The properties are about 1.5 acres. The growth policy designation is suburban residential, which is consistent with our ER, SR, and CR, and you will know that we are recommending WLR, which is what it was zoned before the county took back the county areas, and it has been zoned WLR for years and years before that. So we did notice adjacent landowners. We didn't receive any comments. We reviewed that according to the findings in the zoning regulations. And again, just the growth policy is probably the biggest issue with this particular one because the WLR is not consistent with the suburban residential, but it is consistent with the surrounding zoning. All the zoning around it, kind of to the south and east and west, is the WLR. And zoning it something that would be compliant with the suburban residential, it would be a little kind of spot zone almost. It would not be consistent with all the stuff that's around it. So it is more consistent and best complements that neighborhood, which is why we're recommending the WLR. And it's what it was zoned before the county took that area back over. So I think that's kind of the biggest issue with this particular one. The planning board held a public hearing in March, and they unanimously recommended approval of it. Can I answer any questions for you?
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be our own ordinance 17-17. Anyone wishing to provide public comment tonight, name and address for the record. Not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Frank.
I would move to approve ordinance 17-17, an ordinance rezoning approximately 1.5 acres of land at 1 Tides Way, Whitefish, Montana.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Franson. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that's, again, unanimous. Michelle? We'll move on to item 7D, which will be ordinance 17-18, an ordinance rezoning approximately 1.01 acres of land located at 235 Good Avenue, 333 and 345 Jennings Avenue, and Good Avenue right-of-way in Section 36, Township 31 North, Range 22 West, in Flathead County, Montana, from County R4 to Whitefish WR3, and adopting findings with respect to such rezone.
Okay, the last one of the 44 parcels. So again, this is just to rezone 3 parcels and a portion of Good Avenue from County R4 to City WR3. They were annexed in January, and the WR3 is what they were before and is consistent with surrounding, and is also consistent with the growth policy. We did notice adjacent landowners, place illegal in the paper. We didn't receive any comments at the time. We did have a gentleman come to the public hearing, and he had some concerns and questions about the annexation itself, not really related to the actual zone change. But we did review it according to the criteria in the zoning regulations. Staff was recommending approval. The planning board held their public hearing, and they did recommend approval as well.
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be ordinance 17-18. Any public testimony tonight? Name and address for the record. Not seeing any. I'll close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Jen?
I would move to approve ordinance 17-18, an ordinance rezoning approximately 1.01 acres of land located at 235 Good Avenue, 333 and 334 Jennings Avenue, and Good Avenue right-of-way in Whitefish, Montana.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Sweeney. I think Chuck Stearns would be very pleased tonight to see the last rezone of these 44 parcels adopted. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that again carries unanimously. Michelle. Thanks, Wendy. We will move on to item 7E, which will be resolution number 17, a resolution excluding from the city's boundaries property described as Lake Park Addition, Tract 4 and Block 1, Section 26, Township 31 North, Range 22 West, in Flathead County, Montana. Angie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My staff report is on page 306 of your packet. So back last summer, the City Council annexed several parcels of land in the West Lakeshore area. 2 of those parcels are owned by Bruce and Susan Tate. The Tates have filed a petition to exclude Tract 4 from the city's boundaries. Tract 4 is a parcel that Tate's residence is on. Tract 3. Tract 4 is kind of this irregularly shaped parcel that has a very, very small amount of buildable space, and the Tates have entered into a covenant which prohibits them from building on both lots. So in essence, Tract 4 is really never going to be developed. It kind of provides a buffer between their property and the entire West Lakeshore area with State Park, which gets very, very busy. So on March 6th, the City Council adopted a resolution of an intent to exclude Tract 4 from the city's boundaries. Under Montana law, we're required to publish notice. We did so and take protests for a period of 20 days. Given that the Tates own the entire land to be excluded, we received no protests. And so this is the time under Montana law where we have to hold a public hearing on the resolution that actually de-annexes the property. And again, nothing has really changed. We haven't received any protests. So we, again, are recommending that the City Council adopt the resolution. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Bruce is here. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Angie. Any questions for Angie? We did advertise for a public hearing, and we will hold that public hearing now on what will be Resolution 17-17. Bruce, any comments this evening?
Just a brief point of clarification.
You bet. Just name and address for the record, if you don't mind.
Bruce Tate, 1800 West Lakeshore Drive, Whitefish, 59937. In today's paper, I should say, the Whitefish pilot, there was a misplaced decimal point in the size of the usable acreage remaining after the setbacks. And it read 0.86 acres, and it should have been 0.086. So very small piece of ground if it were to ever be used, which, as you know, in perpetuity on 50-year cycles, this land can never be developed for habitation. So that's the only clarification I have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Bruce, very much. Further public testimony tonight? Not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion.
I will move to approve Resolution 17-17, a resolution excluding from the City of Whitefish boundaries property described as Lake Park Addition, Tract 4 in Block 1, Section 26, Township 31, Range 22 West, PPM Flathead County, Montana.
Second.
There's a motion on the table to approve Resolution 17-17. That was seconded by Councilor Franson. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that carries unanimously as well, Michelle. Thanks for coming tonight, Bruce. We will move on to item 7F, which will be Resolution 17-18, a resolution dedicating in perpetuity approximately 1.5 acres of city property to be used as a public trailhead and approximately 1 acre of city property to be used as a trail corridor for the Whitefish Trail and approving the site plan for the Lower Haskell Trailhead. This was a subject of our work session just a few meetings ago. Greg. Good timing. Angie?
Good evening again. So as you all heard a few weeks ago, Whitefish Legacy Partners is closing in on their Close the Loop campaign to fulfill the neighborhood's plan of a trail system circling the greater Whitefish area. Back in January 2016, FH Stoltz Land and Lumber granted us a perpetual trail easement over some land in Haskell Basin, and Whitefish Legacy Partners intends to get moving on building that trail this spring and to conclude, I think, in October. The part of the trail layout that was proposed by Whitefish Legacy Partners includes a trailhead on property that's adjacent to the water treatment property that's owned by the city that will help take some of the pressure off parking for residents that are on Reservoir Ward that are going to be close to the trail. They've also proposed a trail for maximum alignment that goes along the west side of the water treatment facility property. And Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has granted the city a land and water conservation fund grant. And as part of that grant, the city's basically prohibited from using any improvements that it funds with grant funds for uses other than a public recreational outdoor use unless we get permission, and then we donate another facility basically with least equal market value. So Whitefish Legacy Partners has asked us, just so we're very sure that we're in compliance with the terms of the grant, to basically dedicate this 1.5 acres a trailhead, and it's about 1 mile with the width of the trail in perpetuity for a public use. They've also submitted a site plan for the public trailhead, and that is included in your packet. I think it's Exhibit B. And they would also like the City Council to approve that site plan for the public trailhead. So unless you have any questions, I think I can probably answer questions. Maria might have to help me.
Any questions for Angie? Or Maria or Craig? I have one. Are you comfortable with the site plan as presented? Like, does your Parks Department have any concerns, suggestions?
No, I think it was well done, and it's been vetted by a lot of different groups and is well put together.
Great. Further questions? We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be Resolution 17-18. Any public comment tonight, Chris? Not seeing any, we'll close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Jen?
Move to approve Resolution 18, a resolution dedicating in perpetuity approximately 1.5 acres of city property to be used as a public trailhead and approximately 1 acre of city property to be used as a trail corridor for the Whitefish Trail and approving the site plan for the Lower Haskell Trailhead.
I second.
Motion was seconded by Councilor Williams. Further discussion on the motion, which will be Resolution 17-18. Not seeing any. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously as well. Thanks, Angie. We will move on to item 8, communications from our city manager. Adam, anything to report on or any questions on Adam's written report? Not seeing any. Anything additional to report on?
No, I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that we sent out those letters for the parking leases. There are a couple of bugs that we're working through with the website still, but we gave ourselves a little cushion in that letter by stating that on May 1st that you could go out and begin purchasing the leased parking. So one of the things that we're doing is Dana and I have gone on the website and actually tried to create, log in and create our own applications and different things. And whenever we run into something that isn't quite right or things we'd like to change just to make it a little more user-friendly, we contact the company, we make those changes. So we're going through that process just to make sure that everything goes through smoothly. So that when people go on May 1st, it's as smooth as it can be.
And they don't give up.
Correct. Yeah, they don't want to give up and start making calls. So.
Right. Thanks, Adam. We'll move on to resolution, what will be 17-19, a resolution setting the range of compensation for the position of municipal judge.
Go ahead, Dana.
Dana?
Thanks. In your packet, you'll have my staff report on page 335. The proposed resolution is setting the range of compensation for the position of municipal judge. There will be no change to our current municipal judge's salary. This is only setting the range of that position in preparation for the upcoming election this fall. If you have any questions about the proposed range, I'd be happy to answer those questions. Staff is recommending approval of the resolution.
Any questions for Dana? Frank?
Dana, where did we get these ranges? I know the upper end of the range is the current salary of the judge. My recollection is when we were making decisions on the compensation for our current judge, that we did effectively a market study and determined that we may be paying towards the higher end of that range, but where we're paying now is only at the higher end. It is not the highest that we've seen out in the state of Montana for similar communities. Why are we placing the range at the current, knowing that if we get a new judge and we want to give them a raise, we're going to have to change this again?
Right. At this point, this is going to be the current range for fiscal year 17 that we're still in. So for fiscal year 18, when we get to that budgeting time and we review the current judge's salary, or when the new judge is elected, we'll review their salary at that time. This range will be updated. This just has been a range that hasn't been updated in the past, and our current judge was outside of the range, so more of a housekeeping resolution at this point.
Further questions? I had a phone call today from one of the candidates that's considering running for the city judge position, and his question was, according to this individual, that our code reads that the incoming judge will receive the same compensation as the outgoing judge, and then he quoted the code, and I just had to ask the question, is that accurate or not?
That is accurate. I'm assuming he's referring to section 197 of our city code and the last sentence of that, which is not in Montana code. So the previous sentence actually is Montana code, but it does state until modified by the city council, the initial salary of the municipal court judge shall equal the salary of the former city judge. So that is correct. But you would have the opportunity to modify such salary. So I think that will come up probably with more discussions in the budget season, if that's what you'd like to do. Obviously, there could be the look of how you've set the salary with experience and the market, and consider that. But Adam might have more insight too.
No, and that's kind of the rationale of the range. we wanted to put you in a range, and you guys can set this range. I mean, this is just something that staff came up with. But the thought process is come November when the election is had, you'll know who the judge is going to be. And then you'll have a couple of months to which to make decisions to actually set the salary, or you could just let it run and it would be the outgoing judge's salary.
Okay, great. Thanks, Adam. We will need a motion unless there's further discussion or questions. Frank?
I would move to approve Resolution 17-19, a resolution setting the range of compensation for the position of municipal judge.
A second.
That motion was seconded by Councilor Franson. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that carries unanimously as well. Michelle, we'll move on to item 8D, which is before this comes back for adoption via resolution. Just a quick review of the short and long-term ongoing city council as well as staff goals that we came up with at our work session just a few weeks ago. I hope folks had an opportunity, both staff and council, to look at this list. Any issues, additions, deletions that you foresee? Okay, well, I think we can probably bring this back for formal adoption, if that's okay with the council. Great. Well, it's a quick meeting. You might be right. We'll move on to communications from the mayor and city councilors. We'll start with Pam this evening.
Nothing tonight.
Katie,
No comments.
thanks for hanging in there tonight. Jen?
For Richard's benefit, do we know if anybody's contacted the Government Review Committee, and will they be reporting to the council soon?
I spoke with Turner, and apparently one of the three members of that committee doesn't necessarily agree with the other two members of the committee, so they're kind of ironing out what form this report will take, or if there will be actually two reports submitted. They're still working through those details. They're very much aware that they need to present a report to the council, and I asked that they do so before the end of June.
Great, thank you.
You bet. And Richard's aware of those discussions as well.
I have nothing further.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. Frank?
Nothing this evening.
And I do not have anything either. Anything further from staff? We are adjourned. Thanks very much.